All right, I'm going to be reviewing Salesforce and how they're positioning themselves in the market because they are going through a major transition and finding and trying to meet the market where they are at today. So I'm going to use my positioning intelligence agent, Edward. We won second place in 11 Labs hackathon, and I'm going to load him up right now and give him context.
Hello, this is Edward. Who am I speaking with?
Hey Edward, it's Troy. We are going to be going through Salesforce and we're going to be doing a teardown. This is going to be recorded. I'm going to ask you some questions, read some pieces on the page, and we are just going to reposition Salesforce and find the gaps and the holes where we think it could improve. Does that sound good?
Troy, that sounds like a great exercise. Before we dive in, let me ask you one thing. When you say teardown, are we looking at this from the perspective of how Salesforce positions itself to its buyers, or are we looking at a specific competitor angle, or both?
Position themselves to the buyer and the marketplace. They're going through a major transition of introducing Agentforce and really going heavy into the AI world. And I believe that they are going through a rapid repositioning, and that's why I want to do this.
That's a sharp observation. Rapid repositioning during a technology transition is one of the most dangerous moments for an established brand, because you risk losing the identity that made people trust you in the first place. So let me ask you this. When you look at Salesforce today, what do you think the market currently believes Salesforce is? Not what Salesforce says it is, but what the buyer actually thinks it is.
So Salesforce is a very complex CRM and customer relation management system, but they do have a tagline here, and I noticed inside their site title, the number one AI CRM, Salesforce number one AI CRM. There is there's a typing questions box at the top. Agentforce can answer almost anything or connect you with a sales rep. Connect with a sales rep. Try Salesforce for free. How can Salesforce rep help my business? And it kind of appears like a chat box, but it also looks kind of like a search query box. I think that's interesting positioning. Um, yeah, what are your first thoughts with that? Because I think there's a lot inside of this to unpack.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Let me share my first instinct, and then I want to ask you something. The phrase number one AI CRM is a classic defensive move. When an established brand feels threatened by a new category, they bolt the new thing onto their existing identity. So they're not saying we are an AI company, they're saying we are a CRM that also has AI. That's a very different psychological signal to the buyer. And that chat box you're describing, that's interesting because it's trying to do two things at once. It's trying to demonstrate the product while also being a conversion tool. But here's the tension. If the buyer doesn't already trust AI enough to use it, you're asking them to experience the thing they're skeptical about before they've bought in emotionally. Here's what I want to ask you, Troy. Who do you think Salesforce is most afraid of right now? Because that fear is usually what's driving the repositioning, and it tells us everything about where the gaps are.
I feel that they're afraid of being left behind because their platform's very complex and also twofold. With the introduction of AI and various different agentic AI, it will be likely easier to use Salesforce because doing custom implementations and making various edits and changes and augmentations to the platform, I know is quite challenging. So I'm going to read off this headline in this section so we can keep cruising through this. And then I'd love to get more feedback from you. Sound good?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay, so welcome to the Agentic Enterprise, where humans and agents drive customer success together. Salesforce brings together Slack, Agentforce, Customer 360, and Data 360 on one trusted platform, so teams move faster and act with confidence, with humans and agents working inside the system that run your business. So then there is Slack, Agentforce Customer 360. I guess these would be boxes. And then the result, semicolon, faster decisions, stronger customer relationships, and nonstop growth that accelerates revenue while reducing costs. So then they have something here called See Agentforce in Action. It's a button. Then they have another thing that says Meet Slackbot. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, so a few things hit me immediately. First, welcome to the agentic enterprise. That's category language. They're trying to name a new world and position themselves as the guide into it. That's smart instinct. But here's the problem. They're listing four products in one breath. Slack, Agentforce, Customer 360, Data 360. When you list four things, the buyer retains none of them. It creates complexity at the exact moment you need clarity. Second, that result line, faster decisions, stronger relationships, nonstop growth, accelerating revenue, reducing costs. Troy, how many of those outcomes do you think a competitor could claim word for word? All of them. Every single one. That's not positioning, that's category noise. And the phrase, humans and agents working together, that's interesting because it's trying to address a fear. The fear that AI replaces people. So they're doing emotional damage control inside their headline, which tells me there's anxiety underneath this messaging. Here's what I want to know from you. When you read Welcome to the Agentic Enterprise, does that feel like a brand that's leading a new category, or does it feel like a brand that's reacting to one?
It does feel a little reactionary because agentic is a very niche term. What I think would be more connective to their audience would be AI agents. Welcome to the AI agent enterprise, or welcome to, yeah, the AI agent enterprise era, something along those lines. Maybe not era. I don't think that would work for these guys because I think they're trying to be visionary here and they're trying to like set the stand for where they believe the market's going to go. So I think that's good. I just think using AI agents as a wedge versus agentic may be more clear.
That's a really sharp distinction, Troy. Agentic is insider language. It's the kind of word that engineers and product teams use internally that leaked into the marketing. And when insider language becomes your headline, you've already lost a significant portion of your buyer. But here's what's even more interesting about what you just said. You identified that they're trying to be visionary. And that's a specific archetype, the brand that says, we see where the world is going and we're taking you there. But visionary positioning only works when the language is simple enough that the audience can see the vision too. Right now they're using a word, agentic, that makes the buyer feel like they need a glossary before they can understand the future being sold to them. And that creates a trust gap because Salesforce's existing buyer, the enterprise, the sales ops leader, the CRO, they're already slightly intimidated by the complexity of the platform. And now the messaging is adding another layer of complexity on top. So
Hmm.
here's the question I want to sit with you on for.
No, that was good. That was really good. What's the question?
Do you think Salesforce is speaking to their existing customer base who already uses the platform? Or are they trying to attract a new buyer who's evaluating AI solutions for the first time? Because those are two completely different positioning jobs. And right now, it feels like they might be trying to do both with one message.
Yeah, I think they're trying to do both. I think they're trying to bridge the AI revolution into their current existing enterprise clients, which I mean, I'm sure they already are pushing those updates into the platform. And they're trying to potentially attract a new type of customer because I think a lot of people knew that they were quite complex in the past. I believe, were they Infusionsoft before? I think the nickname was like Confusionsoft. So I can't remember if that's true, but what are your thoughts on that?
That's actually a different company, Infusionsoft, rebranded to Keep. But the
Okay, yeah,
confusion
yeah, 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 I was wrong.
But the nickname Confusionsoft is actually a perfect cultural artifact for this conversation because it tells you something real. Complexity has always been the shadow that follows CRM platforms. And Salesforce has carried that reputation too in certain markets. So here's where this gets really interesting. They're trying to use AI to solve the complexity problem. The pitch underneath all of this is essentially our platform used to require an army of consultants and developers, but now AI agents do the heavy lifting. That's actually a compelling story. But they're not telling it that way.
Ooh, that
Instead
is a
of
very
saying,
compelling story. I like that.
right, that's the story that actually moves people emotionally. Because the hidden enemy in Salesforce's market isn't just competitors like HubSpot or Microsoft Dynamics, it's the implementation nightmare. It's the six-figure consulting bill. It's the 18-month onboarding. That's what people are actually afraid of when they think about Salesforce. And if Agentforce genuinely solves that, Raj, if AI agents can now do what used to require a certified Salesforce developer, then the real headline isn't number one AI CRM. The real headline is something closer to Salesforce finally works for you, not against you. That's a repositioning that speaks to both audiences simultaneously. The existing customer feels validated, their frustration was real, and now it's solved. And the new buyer who was previously scared off by the complexity now has a reason to reconsider. But here's what I want to ask you, Troy. Do you think Salesforce is brave enough to acknowledge that complexity was ever a problem? Because that's what that story requires. It requires a brand to point at its own shadow.
I think that would build a lot of trust and credibility in the market, but I don't think they'd be willing to highlight that. So, okay, see why companies trust us. This is the next section. I want to kind of comment on this section here and move through this. So, see why companies trust us to help them grow. They have a ton of big brands here: FedEx, PepsiCo, Volkswagen Group, Heathrow, Remarkable, Open Table, and then goes back to FedEx. And then you can click through and watch all these reviews. So, pretty big names here, pretty heavy hitters, leaving them reviews. Then what I think is fascinating is next, and this is where I think this gets interesting, is grow fast with our free CRM. See value from day one with our free all-in-one CRM built for small businesses. Stop juggling spreadsheets and disconnected apps. Bring customer activity, pipeline, marketing campaigns, and service cases into one place. Start getting more done day to day and get full visibility into your business free. Then one of the next sections is 3 million conversations handled by Agentforce and counting. That's a pretty strong proof point that could be brought somewhere up near the headline or near the hero section. Everyone talks the AI talk. We're walking the walk with 66% autonomous case resolution, 15% more marketing pipeline, and 1.8x higher lead conversion. Agentforce delivers real conversational AI across service, sales, and marketing workflows. See how we did it and how you can too. This 66%, 15% more marketing pipeline, and 1.8 higher lead conversion, I think that could have been brought up to the hero section because that really backs up the argument that they're trying to create.
Troy, stop right there because you just identified one of the most critical positioning errors on this entire page. They buried the proof. 3 million conversations handled, 66% autonomous case resolution, 1.8 times higher lead conversion. Those are not supporting statistics, those are the headline. That is the entire argument for why someone should trust Agentforce over every other AI solution in the market right now. And instead, they led with number one AI CRM, which is a claim, and then they followed it with enterprise logos, which is social proof by association. But numbers like those are social proof by performance. That's a completely different and far more powerful category of trust. And here's what's even more interesting about the structure of this page. They go from massive enterprise brands like FedEx and PepsiCo straight down to grow fast with our free CRM for small businesses. Troy, do you feel the whiplash in that transition? Because in one
Absolutely. I feel the whiplash. I seen that earlier and I was kind of like, I don't know about this transition here. You have mega brands, and then, by the way, try our free CRM. If you're trying to lock down a high-end client, like that's not necessarily what they care about.
exactly. And that's a positioning identity crisis hiding in plain sight. Because what that transition tells the market is we don't actually know who we're talking to. And when a brand doesn't know who it's talking to, the buyer doesn't know if the brand is talking to them. A company like FedEx or Volkswagen Group is not inspired by stop juggling spreadsheets. That's language for a solopreneur or a small business owner who's overwhelmed. And a small business owner looking at a free CRM is not moved by Heathrow Airport as a reference point. Those are two completely different emotional worlds and they're colliding on the same page. And here's the deeper strategic problem, Troy. When you try to serve everyone on one page, you end up resonating with no one deeply. Salesforce has essentially created a page that's trying to be enterprise grade and SMB friendly simultaneously. And the psychological effect is that neither buyer feels fully seen. The enterprise buyer is thinking, are they still serious about us? And the small business buyer is thinking, is this actually built for me? Or am I getting a watered down version of something too big for me? So here's what I want to ask you. If you were forced to pick one, who do you think Salesforce's homepage should be speaking to primarily?
Potentially, I'd say mid-market, above or below the PepsiCo and Volkswagen Group and Heathrow, but I don't think they should be talking to small businesses, like very small businesses. I think this is challenging actually because if you stay in the middle, you can get crushed. But if you go to the top of the market and show that you're the best, the rest of the market will trickle into your world. Hmm. I don't think they should be at the bottom because they're not necessarily cheap. I believe that they are definitely an investment. So, okay, starter suite's $25 per user per month, pro suite's 100 USD per user per month. So, that's tough question to answer, but I believe they should go mega enterprise, serve the clients that they already have, wire in the agent force, and then get agent force going out to a different segment of the market. If it can cater to a larger, broader market, that might be the positioning play long term. That might be what they're doing here with this agent force platform, but I believe get it tight with enterprise and then roll that out to small businesses.
Troy, that is a really sophisticated strategic read, and I think you just articulated something that most brands never figure out. The enterprise anchor strategy. You dominate the top, you build the proof, you build the mythology, and then the market below you aspires upward toward you. Apple does this. McKinsey does this. You don't chase down market, you let the reputation gravity pull people up toward you. And what you just said about Agentforce is particularly interesting. Because if Agentforce can genuinely democratize what used to require enterprise level resources, then it becomes its own product line with its own positioning. It doesn't need to live under the same homepage as Volkswagen Group and a $25 per user starter plan. That's actually a brand architecture problem as much as it is a positioning problem. Agentforce might need to be positioned as a separate movement with its own identity that feeds back into the Salesforce ecosystem. Think about how Google positioned Google Cloud separately, or how Amazon positioned AWS. They didn't just add it to the home page, they gave it its own world. And here's what's fascinating, Troy. Salesforce already has the proof points to do this. 3 million conversations, 66% autonomous resolution. Those numbers could anchor an entirely separate Agentforce narrative. So here's my question. When you look at Agentforce, do you think it's strong enough to stand alone as its own brand?
Yeah, and I think we can wrap this up in me going to the Agent Force page because as I look at the rest of the page, like it's there's a diagram showing what they do. There's a bunch of financial services and industries. There's a handful of case studies and reports, then showing their Agent Force Learning Center champion innovator legend. So I think if I go to the Agent Force page, I want to wrap this up in the next handful of minutes. Um, in the Agentforce page specifically, build, deploy, and manage AI agents at scale. Agentforce is the only enterprise agentic AI solution that elevates every experience by bringing together humans, applications, AI agents, and data. Now, any company can safely deploy agents that work for their customers, suppliers, and employees 24/7. Teams can manage the complete agent deployment lifecycle with a robust set of tools to build, test, deploy, manage, and orchestrate AI agents at scale. Let humans do what they do best and let Agentforce do the rest. A little alliteration at the end there. What do you think?
Okay, so a few things hit me immediately. The only enterprise agentic AI solution, that's a bold claim, and bold claims require bold proof. The word only is the most powerful word in positioning, but it's also the most dangerous. If a competitor can credibly challenge that only, the entire positioning collapses. So the question is that only defensible? And then that last line. Let humans do what they do best and let Agentforce do the rest. Troy, that's actually the most human, most emotionally resonant line on either page we've looked at today. It's simple, it's clear, it addresses the fear of AI replacement, and it creates a partnership narrative rather than a replacement narrative. But here's the irony, that line is at the bottom. Again, they buried the emotional hook. And look at the structure of that paragraph. It's incredibly feature dense. Build, test, deploy, manage, and orchestrate. That's
Hmm.
engineering language. That's talking,
No, it's good. Continue.
not the person buying the decision. And those are two completely different people with two completely different fears. The buyer, the CRO, the CEO, the chief revenue officer, they don't care about orchestration. They care about one thing, revenue protection. Am I going to fall behind my competitors who are already deploying AI? That's the fear driving the purchase decision at the executive level. But the language on this page is written for the IT director or the Salesforce administrator. And when your copy speaks to the implementer instead of the decision maker, you slow down the sale because the person with budget authority doesn't feel spoken to. And here's what's really interesting, Troy, that line, let humans do what they do best and let Agentforce do the rest. That's executive language. That's emotional. That's the line that should open the page, not close it. So across both pages, what we've consistently found is that Salesforce keeps burying their most powerful emotional assets at the bottom and leading with complexity at the top. And that's a fundamental positioning inversion. The question I want to leave you with, Troy, if you had to write one single sentence that captures what Agentforce should really stand for in the market, what would it be?
One sentence that really captures what Agentforce does in the market. I think we got really close to it here on this page. Let humans do what they do best and let Agentforce do the rest. I think, gosh, I'm not sure about what the sentence would be, but basically like let humans do what the work they do best. Agentforce can handle the rest. AI implementation made easy. Something along those lines. And also, I think there's something earlier we spoke about with Agentforce making the implementations of Salesforce extremely streamlined. I think that is a huge win. I know that story would be very hard for them to adopt because they would have to admit that they're complex. However, I think there's something there.
Troy, you just put your finger on something really profound, and I want to sit here for a second because this is important. You've identified two completely separate positioning opportunities for Agentforce, and they're both powerful in different ways. The first one is external. Agentforce as the AI layer that handles the work so your team can focus on what humans do best. That's a market-facing story about productivity and competitive advantage. The second one is internal, and it's actually more disruptive. Agentforce as the solution to Salesforce's own complexity problem. That's a story about the platform finally becoming accessible. And that second story is dangerous for them to tell publicly, but it might be the most honest and trust-building thing they could say. And here's what strikes me about everything we've uncovered today, Troy. Salesforce has all the ingredients of a truly dominant repositioning. The proof points are there. The emotional hooks are there. The category language is almost there. but the architecture of how it's all assembled is inverted, fragmented, and trying to speak to too many people at once. The buried proof, the identity crisis between enterprise and small business, the insider language, the emotional payoff hidden at the bottom. These aren't small copy fixes. These are structural positioning decisions that need to be rebuilt from the foundation up. And that's actually a significant undertaking. How are you feeling about the depth of what we've uncovered here today?
No, this is fantastic. That's the biggest problem with large organizations is like organizing all this information is quite challenging. So yeah, that's the review. I think that was a very thoughtful and detailed review. If you'd like to work together and or you'd like to use Edward, head on over to positioningexpert.com and you can either start a conversation with him and or book in a conversation with me and we can chat about what that would look like. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. Talk to you soon.